So I got this idea for a video and I thought, lately I've been being very nostalgic for anything from 2001 to 2007, 2008, somewhere in that time frame, right? Just in the past couple of months, I've found myself, being more nostalgic for that time period. And I got the idea of making this video where I talk about how I genuinely think things were better then. And then when I sat down and really thought about it, I was like, this is actually crazy and scary that this is unironically a back in my day type of video, right? And it's like a full circle moment for me because I'm 29 and like now I'm like I'm hitting that. I guess this is 30 middle age. I turned 30 in like 2 months, almost exactly 2 months. So I feel like I'm finally entering into that era of my life where I'm not young anymore by like any metric, right? Like when you're 29, you're still in your 20s, right? And so I'm still a 20-year-old, even though I'm 29, right? But you're still in your 20s. And so by like that loose definition, like, oh, I'm still kind of in the same 10-year bracket as a 20-year-old, right? But obviously I wouldn't be able to even talk to a 20-year-old very long before we would run out of things to talk about. But regardless, this is evidence. I'm officially old right now. I'm old now because I'm actually making a video about back in my day, right? But I feel like that there are objective reasons that things were better back then. And when I think of that, I think, well, surely my parents and my grandparents, when they told their back in my day stories, they also genuinely and objectively thought that things were better back in their day, right? And so I've kind of reached this moment where it's like, is this video even worth making? Because I don't think that I can objectively peel myself away from the rose tinted glasses, the nostalgic feeling of back in my day. But back in 2000, I was born in 94, right? So in 2004 I was 10. And so when I think of the times that I'm feeling nostalgic for right now, it would have been from when I was 7 or 8 years old through 14, 15 years old. And those are like some of your most formative years in your entire life. And so there's no question why I would feel nostalgic for that time. That is like, those things are connected, those being formative years, and that feeling like the best time of your life, those are often connected. And some people have horrible childhoods and trauma and things like that, and so it's not always the case. And I'm very, very lucky that I had the childhood that I had. It wasn't perfect by any means, but like I wouldn't change any of it for sure. Like there's nothing that I would change. So I thought, like, is it even worth making this video? Because I don't think I can have a good, I don't think I'm capable of having an objective discussion about this, because I don't know what is rose tinted and what's not. But I also, part of the nostalgic aspect of this, right, is that I started watching YouTube around 2007, 2008. And I, from that moment, like when I got addicted basically to YouTube, that was the moment where I decided I wanted to be a YouTuber. And another, full circle moment is that back in October of 2023, I quit my job and I am like a full-time YouTuber now, right? And so I feel like there's these two full circle moments happening all at the same time. And one of the things that got me into YouTube to begin with was these types of videos of just a normal person talking to whoever wants to watch. And so I feel like I would be doing myself a disservice by not making this video. And maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later in this video, and how I feel like YouTube has changed. Because if you didn't notice, this is my second channel, and this is like 2 months almost since I posted my last video. I think 6 weeks or something like that. And I want to post more on this channel. And so for that reason, and for the reason that I miss earlier YouTube as part of this broader topic, I'm gonna make this video anyway, even if it is a back in my day video and it is, full rose tinted nostalgic bait. Okay, but when I think back to like 2004 to 2006, right, 2004 we got the Nintendo DS. 2006 I think was the year that the Xbox 360 and PS3 came out. Okay, so like right there we enter into the 1080p era basically. Right now I know like a lot of those games didn't natively run 1080p or whatever, but like the first 1080p televisions at least were hitting the market around the 2005 2006 era. Okay, and 720p, which is like the original HD, even though it's not actually like, we wouldn't consider it HD these days, right? Which by the way, it still kind of holds up. It's still okay. Like I sometimes watch 720 on my phone, like when I'm traveling and stuff, and it's fine on a smaller screen. But regardless, 720p came out in like the end of the 90s, early 2000s. So like we from a entertainment perspective, right, all of our entertainment media in that time frame from 2001 to 2007 was in basically HD. Not not as good as today, I'm not making that claim, but like it was pretty good, right? Like it was mostly there. Like obviously you look at something that's like 360p or 360i or whatever it was back then, interlaced video. I was a little too young to understand all that stuff, but when you look back at all of that and you look back at like the original 3D, like the N64 for example, there's clearly a big jump from like the N64 to the GameCube in my mind, right? And again, maybe that's just nostalgia, I don't know, but like the PS1 to the PS2 felt huge. That felt like a massive jump, and you get that sort of exponential, that curve, right? Like as we hit, let's say PS1 to PS2 was a big jump, PS2 to PS3 was a pretty big jump, PS3 to PS4 was a decent sized jump, and 4 to 5 is like not that big of a jump, right? Like it is, right? If you play Hogwarts Legacy on one console versus the other, it's obvious the differences are there, but it's like 95% there, right? I mean, let's be real. Okay, so when we're talking about HD gaming and media, I would say in the 2002 to 2007 era, we were like 85% there. Okay, let's call it 80% or 75, whatever you want to argue about the specifics. You get my point, right? My point is that like most of what we have now was started back then. Okay, and we've made incremental improvements, but a majority of it was there. We had the Nintendo DS, and that implies that we had everything on the Game Boy Advance and the original Game Boy. So we had Pokemon, we had all these great franchises, and all the great franchises from the 80s and 90s were making their transition into the new millennia, right? And so we had all these massive media franchises. You think about all the ones that are big today, they were still around back then, right? We had Marvel, we had Star Wars, we had Jurassic Park, we had all the big ones, and even like Fast and the Furious was around back then, which is so sad that they're still making those. But my point is, from an entertainment media perspective, I feel like the landscape hasn't really moved that much in 20 years. And again, surely there are things that, obviously like the mobile gaming scene has exploded, and we have like virtual reality headsets now, all that sort of stuff. And there's plenty that's changed. But when I think about what I like right now, if I boot up Call of Duty, okay, the experience that I have right now playing Call of Duty is not that different than the experience I had playing Call of Duty in 2007. Okay, that's just the reality. It's mostly there, and that's just the truth. And so when I think about from an entertainment perspective, we had most of what we have now back then, but what are we missing from back then, right? Like what was absent? I mean, the iPhone came out in 2007 and it didn't launch with an app store. So really the iPhone didn't take over our attention spans until I would argue around the time that Instagram came out or something along those lines, which I don't even, what was that, 2010 or something? Oh wow, I was right. Yeah, October of 2010, and it was bought by Facebook in 2012. And I would argue that when Zuckerberg got his hands on that, I would say that's around the time where the modern age of the internet really started to explode, right? Because back in the day, back in my day, you would boot up Facebook or MySpace even, right? But Facebook, really, you would see posts in order of when they were posted. I know, isn't that crazy? Before we had the feed, we had the timeline, okay? And the timeline was literally like you would go on Facebook and it would show you like whatever the most recent person posted that you're friends with, you would see that, and then the next thing would be whatever was posted before that, and it would be basically in order, right? There was no feed, there was no algorithm, it was just what people were posting in that order, which a lot of people, when they switched it to the feed, a lot of people hated that, which that's a topic for a whole other video. But I would say that it is obvious, you can't dispute the fact that usage of devices went up when we shifted to an algorithmic based feed. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that we didn't have the smartphone as we know it today back then, but we did have all of the luxuries of our modern media that we had mostly. Okay, and that kind of, to me, feels like a beautiful recipe, right? Because like here we are at that moment right in the middle of the beginning of a massive change in the entire world, right? Like this phone in everyone's pocket these days has changed everything, right? And whether that's for better or for worse, you know, you can decide for yourselves. But you know, what I find interesting is that we still had like most of the benefits of technology, I would say, right? Like I had heart surgery when I was 12 years old, which means it would have been like what, 2006. Okay, and they didn't even have to cut me open, and my heart's fine now. Okay, so like we had pretty advanced medical technology, I would argue. And we also had AOL Instant Messenger. Shout out to those of you that can still hear the little creaking door noise in the back of your head. Okay, or you've got mail, right? Like that is like still a thing that is burned in everyone's brains. So we had ways, many ways of instantly communicating with people, right? Now granted, you had to be at your desk to do that. These days it's iMessage or some sort of DM on social media platforms, but as long as you were home, you could AOL instant message people. You could chat just like you could right now. If I open my MacBook right now and I use iMessage to text somebody, that experience is pretty much the same as what AOL instant messenger was. You would just send messages back and forth. You could see when people were typing, I think. I can't remember now, but regardless, you had that, and cell phones were becoming relatively popular. It wasn't like impossible to afford one. I mean, I didn't really have my first cell phone until probably 2007 or something like that, 2008 maybe, I don't even remember. And it was a relatively cheap flip phone. I think I might have had a phone earlier briefly for a moment, but my point is all of the luxuries that we enjoy from our phone we kind of already had. We had instant messaging. It was kind of nerfed. It wasn't available at all times, but we had text messaging too. Remember learning T9 mode on your flip phone, right? I know I just unlocked a core memory that you didn't even realize you had, texting with T9 mode. Okay, so you could text your friends and you could instant message them online, and the iPod came out in 2001, so we still had portable music and media. And I mean, look, the standard flip phone back then, I can't believe I just found this, the standard flip phone back then, okay, the Motorola Razr, I mean, it wasn't that much thicker. Like sure, it's definitely thicker, okay, but it's not nearly as long. So when you talk about like total volume, it's going to be less total volume in your pocket, and it'll sit right next to your iPod. And as far as like real estate that it takes up in your bag or your backpack or whatever, it's pretty much the same as like a Pro Max these days. It's maybe a little bit more, a little bit clunkier, okay, but like at the end of the day, my point is technology was like pretty good for back then, right? Am I crazy? Am I going nuts? We had thin phones, we had portable MP3 players, we had instant messaging, we had pseudo HD gaming and television, right? All the big media franchises were around back then, and this part is objective. A lot of those franchises were better back then. Let's just keep it 100%, okay? A lot of these franchises were better back then. The only thing that we are missing from that time period is the feed, the algorithm, the TikTok, right? The constant scrolling on every social media platform. That's what we were missing. And honestly, I don't mind that. I kind of miss the back in the day when we didn't have the constant mindless scrolling. And look, I know that this is self-inflicted, right? Just turn your phone off. Just turn your phone off, right? Like just turn it off. I mean, problem solved, right? And true, fair enough. Like we all have to take a little bit of accountability for our own attention spans. Like we are the ones opening up those apps every day. And so it really, it comes down to us. But at the same time, you know, the world does move faster now. It feels like information is instant. Trends have gone from a week long to a day long. It just is what it is. Careers for famous people are you know, flash in the pan all the time now. Okay, things move faster these days, and it feels like if you don't have at least some of these apps that you check semi regularly, you're probably just gonna miss out on whatever pop culture is at that time. And really, what is your alternative? Like, sure, you could go back to just watching broadcast television, right? You could do that. And yes, books, shout out to books, right? Like they're still around, but it kind of feels like Pandora's box. And again, the responsibility comes down to the individual, of course. Like again, it's my decision to open Instagram every day. But now that the box has been opened, now that our brains have spent the last 10 years scrolling or 12 years scrolling, it feels like they're kind of fried. And I can only speak for myself, and I know that some people I've met are much worse than me, and I'm much worse than many people in terms of like screen time every day on my phone. But with the infinite scrolling in the algorithms comes the destruction of the attention span, which you can build back. We all could do that, but it just doesn't feel the same. I don't know. I've spent hundreds, literally hundreds, maybe even 1,000 hours on Game Boy games. Actually, I know it's over 1,000 hours for sure, because I put over 200 hours in Pokemon Ruby alone. Okay, and so when we talk about Pokemon Yellow through Ruby, it's over 1,000. And when I tried to play Leaf Green again the other day, I found that it was slow. It was just slow. Okay, and look, I've beaten the game 100 times. So part of it to me, like the game not pulling me in, is partially because it's solved content. There's nothing new there. I've beaten the game 100 times, but I haven't beaten it in many years. And so I thought, well, surely there are many things about the game that I forgot, or it's a little bit gray areas and things like that. And I'm sure that's the case. If I were to sit through the game and play through it, I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I forgot that dialogue existed, or whatever the case might be, or, oh, I can find this Pokemon here or there. But my point is that the game feels slow to me, even though the game has not changed. The game is the same as it's always been. My brain expects more things to happen, more information. It needs the game to be faster because I'm so used to the, short attention span content of 2024. And so when I think back to how I was when this game came out, and look, again, I know this is nostalgic, and I know that I'm not looking at this objectively. I can't possibly, it's impossible for me to actually be objective about this given my subjective experience and how old I was. But when I think back as to what I felt back then, or I should say in retrospect, it seems like we had most of what we have today, but I also had my attention span. And that's what feels so weird to me, where it's like, was all this progress, like, was from everything from 2007 to now, was it worth it? I mean, surely the answer is yes, right? Like, surely. And kids, that are, if you're watching this and you're 10 years old or 15 years old, and you grew up on Fortnite in 2017 or whenever that game came out. Oh my God, it was July of 2017. That was 7 years ago, brother. 7 years ago. Fortnite doesn't feel 7 years old. It doesn't. I'm so depressed. Jesus Christ. Even Fortnite feels like a new game to me. That's how old I am. Okay. Fortnite came out when I was like, what, 22, 20, whatever. The point is, okay, people that are younger than me probably look back on Fortnite the same way that I look back on the Nintendo DS and that era of gaming. Okay, so I know that I'm not looking at this objectively, but I guess the point of this video is I need to know from other people. I need to know, am I right here? Am I right about this? Do you also feel this way? Like, were things actually better back then, or am I just crazy? Because if I talk to my dad, like, I don't think he feels the same way, because he was already in a full grown adult when the internet was like became a mainstream thing. He was probably like mid 30s before he got even dial-up in the house, or early 30s maybe. I don't know what they had before I was born, obviously, but so he was older when he got access to the internet than I am now. And so I mean, your brain is mostly done developing by the time you're like, what, 27, 28, something like that, or 25, somewhere in that range. So I feel like any massive technology that comes out after that time, you have to really try to like be in it. And so, for him and for, other people in that generation, the boomer generation, obviously the internet changed the world, and everyone knows that regardless of how old you are, but they didn't like live through that transition. And that's why for me, it's like, I remember playing with action figures in my backyard for hours, bro, hours. And I cannot imagine, I hope kids still do that, but I can't imagine that they do. Okay, I mean, they're glued to the iPad, they're glued to TikTok. I've seen videos of kids dual wielding phones, or they have a phone and an iPad and they're scrolling on both at the same time. Like their brains are cooked, bro. They are cooked immediately. Like they're not even 4 years old and they're fried. Okay, their dopamine has flooded their brain. It's over. They've peaked. It is all downhill from there. And so I guess my hypothesis or my belief is that back in 2004, 2002, 2007, okay, that era, we had most of the perks of technology that we still enjoy today. We had thin cell phones that could instantly text whoever you wanted. We had instant messaging on the home computer. We had MP3 players that fit in your pocket. We had mobile gaming that fit in your pocket. And like, yeah, all of it in one device is great, especially because the camera is not as good as the one I'm using, but it's good enough for 99.9% of things. And so like, yeah, having it all in one device is like way better. That's why the smartphone is exploded. But my point is, we had most of what we still enjoy, but we still had our attention spans. There wasn't the feed, there wasn't the algorithm. And so I feel like that as a recipe is a objectively better life, a better experience, because you can be more in the moment with that better attention span. And again, I'm talking about it like it's this thing that's dead, like as if I don't have full autonomy over my own body. But again, we've spent the past 12 years scrolling through the algorithms, and it's like I feel like our brains are kind of shot, and there's no convincing, like we're not going back, right? Like we're not going back. It's just, it is what it is, you know. We're here. Okay, so my question to you is, am I crazy, or is there something here? I don't even know if I'm gonna post this, but I don't know. At this point, this says I've been rambling for 33 minutes, and that is the other component of this, is and I mentioned this earlier, the shift in YouTube and how YouTube is just a much different platform now than it was before. And I feel like part of the inspiration to make this video is that I used to watch content like this. I used to watch content of people who had gaming footage, and they just talked about a topic. Like, and that was the whole point of my main channel, which has now completely shifted into mobile gaming, which is fine, and I love that, and I'll still do that on the main channel. But the reason that I even started that channel to begin with was to make gaming commentary style videos specifically over Call of Duty content. That was exclusively a Call of Duty channel for that type of content, and that type of content I feel like has kind of died. Right, like, you know, the early phase type content, or, you know, the Woody's gamer tag, Wings of Redemption, the early nade shot type of streams, like that type of content I feel like is pretty much gone. I mean, it's still there. I mean, people still post it, but it's not, and maybe I'm just not on the right side of YouTube, or maybe I'm just older now and that type of content doesn't really appeal to me as much as I think it should. But my point is, like, you don't see T Martin blowing up these days, right? And he still gets probably hundreds of thousands of views. I don't follow him anymore, but you know, the point is the X draws of back in the day like doesn't seem to exist anymore. Like those people were on the top of the platform, and now this commentary style video is kind of a subgenre, little niche pocket of YouTube, it feels like, at least. And you know, it to me, I miss it because it was more simple. And I think that things really changed around 2016, 2017. After the adpocalypse, YouTube became much more brand friendly. And, you know, I think in the past like year or two, maybe things have kind of shifted a little bit. But, you know, prior to that, we had like the Leafy is here generation and that sort of stuff, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, obviously he was just bullying kids, but I thought that was funny. And you know, sometimes, you know, a little bit of bullying can't hurt, because kids are stupid, and it's important to make sure they know they're stupid. That way they don't become stupid adults, because there's nothing worse than a stupid adult. It's better to be told you're stupid when you're young. That way when you're older, you're a little less stupid. And we're all, I mean, let's be real, I'm an idiot, okay? We're all dumb, but sometimes you gotta hear it, okay? So I don't know, I liked that content, and now it's not really a thing anymore. But my point is, YouTube now is far different than it was before. And I think a lot of people look at Mr. Beast and I feel like people kind of blame Mr. Beast, and it's not his fault. He deserves his success. His content is the best on the platform, pretty much objectively. Like, that's why he's the most subscribed YouTuber. Okay, his content is insane. He played the game, he won, he deserves it. There's nothing wrong with Mr. Beast. I love Mr. Beast, and his philanthropy is incredible. He's changing the world, like no question. He is changing the world. But I feel like people use him as a poster boy for that symbolic change in YouTube, right? Like, he is the hyper example of what YouTube is now. It is like the most clickbait, the highest production value, the highest, most hyped, most money, most whatever. It's pushing the envelope of most extreme content in every way. Like, every video is built for the algorithm, every video is built for the viewer to watch the whole thing all the way through, and it's all about retention time and click-through rate and all this other stuff. And that's why you see so much content these days with the thumbnails like, and I'm guilty. I do it on my main channel because you have to do it. You just, if you don't do it, it doesn't, I mean, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, but like the reason people do it is because it works, right? And you can't argue with that, whether you like it or not, it works. And so you either do it or you don't. And if you can find a way to succeed without it, amazing, that's great. But people do it because it works, right? And along with that comes the constant cut. Like, every 6 seconds in a video is a new frame, a new shot, a new thing, a new animation, a new explosion, a new whatever, a new sound bit, a new meme. And you know, and it's for retention time, and the reason people do that is because it works, right? But I miss these kinds of videos. I do. And again, maybe if I searched for it, maybe this type of content still exists, and maybe the reason that it's not popular is because I don't like it, right? I mean, I'm not watching it, so surely I'm not, you know, it died for a reason. But I figured I would indulge myself. I figured I would do what I used to do back when I started YouTube and wanted to be a YouTuber, because it feels like a lifetime since then, if not two. And you know, I'm trying to remind myself why I started doing YouTube in the first place. It's because I liked talking to a camera without thinking about click-through rate, retention time, the thumbnail, the topic of the video. Like, oh gosh, I love being a YouTuber. I love that this is my full-time job, and I'm lucky to have it. And maybe I won't be a full-time YouTuber forever. We'll see what the future holds. But for right now, it's what I do, and I love doing it. But there is something about a hobby becoming a job that definitely, you lose a piece, right? You lose a piece objectively, because like, now you're not doing it just because you love it. You're also doing it because of another reason, right? I mean, people, like, I have bills to pay. Just, that's not my fault. Like, I have to live somewhere. I have to have a roof, and I gotta have Diet Mountain Dew, right? I have bills. So obviously that influences the type of content that I make. And so I love what I do, but also in some aspects it's a job, right? Like dealing with sponsors and stuff. Like, if I could just never take a sponsor again, I would just not do it. And like, I like the sponsors that I've worked with, right? Like, genuinely. But sponsored work is work. Like, it is work, and it's not hard work. I'm not here to, like, I'm not looking for pity or anything like that. Like, I get that I'm lucky to do what I do, but what I'm trying to say is there is now a work component to it, and you miss and you lose something. You just lose something when you do that. And those people who watch this, who turned their hobby into a job, you know what I'm talking about. You guys already know. Okay, it's hard to explain if you've never gone through it, but I wanted to make this video for two reasons. First of all, am I crazy? Am I right? Am I not right? Do you miss the old YouTube as well? And two, I just wanted to do what I used to do back when I started to do this, you know what I mean? And so yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know in the comment section below, do you agree with whatever I've said in this video, or am I just a boomer now? Have I just lost my mind? Like, am I decrepit? I feel like I am. I feel like I'm just you know, objectively old now. And so this is what old people do. They rant about back in their day, and they should have shut up 20 minutes ago, but here we are. And so let me know in the comment section below what you think about that. And while you're down there, if you want me to make more videos like this, more old style YouTube, drop a thumbs up on the video, and you know, that will encourage me to keep doing this stuff. And you know, the YouTuber part of my brain is like, you should have put the call to action in the first 60 seconds of the video, and now people aren't going to make it to the end, and they're not going to see it, and they're not going to click a thumbs up video. And that's like the little thing in the back of your head that, like, that part, that's what changes, right? Anyway, like the video, subscribe if you want more content like this, and that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later. Peace.